Well, hello, my friends. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, since last December. I thought I would get it started up again around these holidays because we're going to be getting together, and I want everyone to stay healthy. That's like my main goal is for people to be healthy. That's why I went to medical school. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Fell. I'm a naturopathic physician licensed in the state of Washington. I do a primary care clinic called Revive Family Medicine. You can see that on the screen mentioned there. You can always find out more information there. But the main reason I'm doing this now is because we're going to gather the holiday season. And if you notice this is the picture of a family who gathered before somebody mentions the vaccine or Trump or Biden. After that, it turns into a food fight. But hopefully it doesn't for your family. It won't for my family, I don't think. I can hope. But there's always that one person who just is so cantankerous. But on top of that, I want more important than that. I want us to stay healthy. There's this new variant going around called the what are they calling now? It was the Delta. What do they have now? The wow, the Omicron variant, the Greek letter. It skipped a few. There were some other variants that really didn't make it very far in spread. This Omicron variant it's of a concern to some note. It doesn't seem to be quite as devastating as the Delta variant has been, but it is very contagious. So one of the things I wanted to do is to see how can we decrease the risk. People always talk about the vaccine in the context of decreasing the risk of dying because it doesn't decrease the risk of spreading it anything significant. And it doesn't decrease the risk in any significant way of you becoming infected. But it does decrease the risk of you developing severe disease and dying, especially if you're in a high-risk population. I know just me mentioning that, some people will click off and say I'm a shrill for Pfizer and Moderna. That could be nothing farther from the truth. What I do not support the mandate. But where there's evidence to support something, the information we have at a time, you got to take that into consideration. But it should be a personal choice. Now I just alienated another large chunk of people. Well, I hope not. Well, let's look at this. This beautiful window. You see this beautiful scenery right here. That's not what it's going to look like outside my window on Christmas Day. Probably going to be raining or cloudy. And like today, it was a whole 39 degrees and quite wet, but not really raining very hard. But you need to have your windows open when you got people in the house. That's super important. You need to keep air moving and flowing in the house. If you don't keep air moving and flowing in the house, the viral particles just kind of sit around where they are and build up as we talk. And as we talk, I've shown some pictures in the past of how far out our vapor really goes. Our aerosolized particles go. They go pretty far. So having a windows open enough to get some circulation, turn up the heat if you have to, can be very helpful on decreasing the number of particles that are floating around, the viral particles that are floating around. Another thing that we can do, if you have one of these kind of things, you can put it on. Right now, it says this is on auto, which means it'll only turn on when the heat or air conditioning, if you're in that part of the world, will turn on. But if you put it on circulate, it'll come on even if the heat doesn't go on. I know most Christmas parties I go to, the house gets quite warm. And so in order to keep the air flowing, put it on circulate. That way, even if the heat doesn't come on, you're going to have fresh air circulating around the house, keeping that air moving again. If your system can have a HEPA filter in it, that's even better to filter out those viral particles. One of these can really help too. And I know there's two Honeywell things, but I have no stake in Honeywell whatsoever. But I use a couple of these in my medical office in Yelm to keep the air. It's a HEPA compliant filter that will filter out viral particles, and most of them anyway. So this is another way of keeping the air fresh and moving so that the viral particles don't build up. So I would get one of these if you have one. This one can do 465 square feet. It's also great to have in the bedroom to keep dust down and dander and great for allergies. You can get a smaller one if you got a smaller room. But that's important, is the fresh air. Why? Because let's say it'll take 10 million viral particles in order to make someone sick. and you're exposed to 5 million of those particles, and you're not going to get sick. You won't get noticeably sick anyway. But somebody else may only need to get exposed to 5 million. And if they got exposed to 10 million, they would get really sick. Somebody got exposed to 9 million, might get a little sick. So you want to keep the amount of viral particles that somebody's exposed to down as low as you can. So wearing a mask can help if it's a properly worn mask and a proper mask. The N95s or K95s are best, but let's be realistic on what people will wear and wear properly. There is the ASTM level 2 masks that are true surgical masks. I highly discourage people getting from really cheap, those blue masks that aren't really ASTM level 2 masks. These really cheap masks from other countries where they're making these really horrible masks. They don't stick to the nose very well, and they really don't do a good job. But is it the best thing? No. But we can keep air circulating in the house and keep air fresh. That's something I highly encourage. Another thing, obviously, we all know about washing our hands. Here's a quick tip on washing your hands. Yes, 20 seconds, soap. You don't need antibacterial soap. Don't spend the money on it. You don't need it. That's not really going to do anything. It's the soap dealing with the stuff that's on your hand with the water, and don't use hot water. Hot water will just irritate your skin and dry it out. Use lukewarm water is fine. You could even use cold water if you're so inclined. It really wouldn't make a difference. When they've done studies to see how much comes off the hands with soap and cold water, it was the same as with warm or hot water. The water is never going to be hot enough to kill the bacteria, and it doesn't need to be. So it'll just dry out your hands and make your hands chapped and dried out as much as we should water them. And the second tip on that, and this is a great one, it's use paper towels in your guest bathroom instead of a cloth towel. Well, we all know we got somebody like an Uncle Joe who will stink up the bathroom, and you spend about 3 seconds with his hands under the water, and then he's going to wipe his hands on the towel. Now, who wants to use that towel after Uncle Joe? Nobody should anyway. So paper towels is a great way to go on that. So those are the things that you can do, but the most important things come up next, and that's what we can do for ourselves. That's how we can protect our families and protect our friends in the environment, is to keep the air going and to have a place for people to wash their hands and use regular paper towels. And, if somebody's highly vulnerable, to wear a mask around them, and also test yourself before you go. Very simple. These tests are about $10 a piece now, and they're coming down in price. They take about 15 minutes to process and do. You can do them yourself in your home before you get in the car to go, a couple hours before people come over, or even a day before people come over. Test yourself and test yourself before you go. And if you're sick, if you come up positive, there's a second test you would do and see if it's a true positive. And if it is, well, then we need to get some treatment going and keep you healthy, but keep you away from the rest of the family. Other than that, if you come up negative, let's spend time together. But test is a very important tool. So you can get these tests, order them in advance. There's a lot of companies making these tests now, so they're much more widely available. Sometimes you can pick them up in a local drugstore, but usually not. You can order them online. So get yourself tested. And besides that, get yourself healthy is the number one thing we can do. The number one risk factor, this is the most important stuff, if you stuck with me. The number one risk factor is probably, besides our age, is the weight we carry in our midsection. Now, I hate it when people make fun of people who are carrying extra weight. I at one time carried a bit of extra weight myself. It's not even if those that you would call obese that are at increased risk. The more weight, there's a linear connection between the heavier the weight. Let me skip up here to that slide. Between the heavier the weight and the risk of being hospitalized, intensive care, and dying. But it doesn't just mean if you're obese, it's if you're carrying extra weight. But we can't instantly do something about that. Right? I mean, you can't. There's a reason why this happens is the tissues that are here. It shows two pictures. One of them is the lean fat cells, because when you lose weight, you don't lose your fat cells. They just become smaller, skinnier cells. But when they're larger, they elicit a lot more of an immune system response. And that might sound good on the surface, but it's not. It's local there, and then it stimulates them to produce these chemicals that are called cytokines and chemokines and other things that promote inflammation in the body. And with COVID, you might have noticed that people don't die when they're in the viral phase. They just don't. the first week, first 10 days. It's usually not even in the first 14 days. It's usually after that when they're entering this inflammatory phase that's damaging their blood vessels and damaging their organs. And a lot of that can be tied very solidly back to the fact of us carrying extra weight and the inflammation that it produces. So we can't lose that weight instantly. But what we can do is take things that help decrease the inflammation. Just as a note here, this is one of those scientific-y things that shows if anything that is on the right side of this, which everything is, means you're at increased risk. So even if you're younger and carrying some extra weight, you're at increased risk. That's just a little note on that. So some of the things we can do is, honestly, it sounds very simple, is actually eat some vegetables. Seriously, a little bit of vegetables. 1 serving if you're not eating them now, 2 servings. They are powerful anti-inflammatories. They help to regulate the immune system and to bring down the whole inflammatory burden. Or like simple sugars, we're eating a lot of that stuff around the holidays, the simple sugars and the fats and all that kind of stuff, which increases inflammation. So we kind of have this storm out going on here with the virus getting infected, adding to our weight and adding to our inflammatory load at the same time. That's kind of a storm. So one of the things we can also do is to make sure our vitamin D levels are adequate. And vitamin D3, now, generally, it's safe to take up to 4,000 international units for most adults, teenagers and adults. Kids, a little bit different, but you really should check with your doctor. And I want to do a disclaimer. Nothing that I'm about to say or that I said is specific medical advice for you to take action on. It's information and education for you to help you make decisions, to work with your doctor and try to make some wise decisions and do whatever is safe for you as well. So vitamin D3. Some people, a lot of my patients need 10,000 international units. A lot of them need 10,000 international units. And with that, I almost always give vitamin K2. It can come together. Vitamin D3 and K2 can come together. I'm not endorsing any brands you see here, but vitamin K2 is important to make sure that higher dose of vitamin D doesn't affect where calcium is going to be deposited in the body. So that's important to keep in mind. If your doctor tells you to take 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3, ask them about taking some vitamin K2. And if they don't know about it, just inform them about it. It's generally accepted knowledge out there that you need a little K2 if you're taking a bunch of D3. Well, what about zinc? Zinc is important for every part of our immune system response. We need, and about a third of the world is zinc deficient. Not so much in the United States. It's still pretty high though. But how much zinc do we need? On a daily basis, 15 milligrams ought to be enough. But when we're sick, we need more because zinc doesn't only work with our immune system throughout that whole process, but it also is involved in inhibiting the viral replication by interfering with a particular protein when it gets in to help a particular substance like quercetin get into the cell, which is my next thing, quercetin. Quercetin, I recommend generally for people to take about 250, for my patients, 250 milligrams a day or 500 milligrams split up, 250 twice a day. Sometimes higher, depending on people's health needs. And if they're on certain medications, I decrease that amount because these things can interfere with certain medications. Vitamin C is another one. Higher doses of vitamin C are not unsafe for most people, but your body doesn't absorb very much. So you want to split the vitamin C that you take at any given time. You don't want to take 4,000 or 5,000, even when you're sick and you're taking a higher dose at the same time. You need to split it up. 500 twice a day should be plenty, or 1,000 twice a day should be plenty for most people. So those are the key sort of baseline things to help with the immune system and to do a little bit with inflammation. But the vegetables and fruit are really key parts of that. If you want some help with it, go out to revivefamilymedicine.com. There's also I have a page on there just for COVID-19, and you can schedule an appointment with me if you want to deal with your specifics and really get you healthy and what nutrients your body might need. I also do use some herbs for preventing and prophylaxis type thing to help strengthen up your body and your immune system and deal with inflammation. There's a lot we can do. Let's work together to do it, to keep our family safe. Use a little bit of wisdom, open up some windows, have paper towels instead of cloth towels. Be smart about things and get your body healthy. Take some vitamin D, some vitamin C, if it's right for you, and a little bit of zinc and some quercetin, and keep your body healthy. The last couple of things I want to say is you can gargle with Listerine. I almost forgot about this one. Listerine that has the essential oils, eucalyptol, thymol, and menthol. These can doing this after you're exposed to people who are possibly sick has been shown to help decrease the potential for viral load to build up in your throat and nasal areas. Another thing you can use, which doesn't have a solid research behind it. There was a one paper, but they couldn't replicate it. But it's safe enough. It's Xlear, the original one, not the one that has a decongestant in it. In this Xlear, you just pump it up your nose a couple of times and do a good blow. It'll help pull things out of your nose as well. But if you've been exposed or think you've been exposed, this one's not for daily use. It's a betadine nasal spray. But if you start to get sick, you can squirt one squirt up your nose twice a day. And this betadine, or if you've been around a big party and you may have been exposed, it's safe to use on an intermittent basis. But the Xlear is safe to use on a daily basis. The Listerine you can gargle on a daily basis, but definitely after you come home from a big gathering or something, do a deep gargle. Just don't swallow it. And I hope you enjoy the holidays. Eat some good food and include a bunch of vegetables and fruit with the tasty treats to help your body deal with whatever it might face, whether it's coronavirus, the flu, a regular cold. And if you start to get sick, reach out and get help because early treatment can make a big difference. And there are many different things from conventional medications to herbs and concentrated supplements that can help you weather this storm and perhaps even decrease the possibility of you progressing on and developing long-term symptoms. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Visit me out at revivefamilymedicine.com. Spread the word that there is hope in treatment, that we can do something. If you want to deal with the idea of having a little bit too much weight, we can work on it. There's a lot of involved besides just trying not to eat certain things. But I'm here for you, and I hope all of you have a blessed and wonderful day and holiday. And I look forward to seeing you again in these live streams and anywhere else we might meet. God bless you all, and have a good night. Bye.